Good morning. Welcome to Morning Java. I'm Matt Grubba alongside Chris Bradford. Morning Java always brought to you by Get Go Cafe and Market, where they've still got their breakfast deal, 2 for $6 croissant sandwiches. It's a great deal. You can get it all day, too.
Also, breakfast combo, $3.99, includes sandwich, hash brown, and a small coffee.
Small coffee. You can also swap in other drinks, I'm sure, for a little charge if you're not a coffee drinker like me. And
I need the caffeine.
yeah, well, I think some Pitt fans were needing something a little harder than that after Saturday night's game into Sunday morning. By the time everything was done at Heinz Field, just Penn State comes in and dominates 51-6. I mean, you weren't there, but were you even surprised just seeing that score? I think a lot of people were.
I hate to say it, but I kind of expected Penn State to win. I didn't think they'd win, obviously, by 40-some points. But I think we've seen where these programs are. We saw it last year. I mean, when Penn State is motivated, you can see that these are two different programs. It's kind of apples and oranges. Penn State is competing for national championships in the Big Ten. Pitt rather is kind of their Pitt.
Yeah, and you know what? You saw that, but for the first half of that game, it's toe to toe. Pitt's actually outgaining Penn State. It's a 7-6 game right up till the end of the half. Then the big miscue, the fumble by punter Kirk Christodoulou on the long snap, puts Penn State in great position. They're able to get a touchdown to go up 14-6. Even then, Pitt wasn't out of it. Penn State gets the ball to start the half and goes 3 and out. I mean, Pitt had so many opportunities there, and it was just one of those where things slipped out of their hand, and then they just snowballed in the third quarter. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Now, in the second half of Saturday night's game, we saw Penn State start to pull away, and we even saw them, James Franklin, maybe even pull a few tricks, maybe running up the score a little bit.
Well, first of all, when Pitt let it get out of hand in the third quarter, it was just, one mistake after the other costing Pitt field position. You had muffed punts, you had just offense not being able to get out of their own end zone. Of course, Pitt gave up a safety with a holding penalty in the end zone. So Pitt's average starting drive in that second half was inside their own 20. That's not the way you're going to get anything going. And then the running game couldn't get back on track the way it was in the first half. Quadriolison actually lost yards for the second half. He finished with 119 on the game, but he had 125 in the first half. And Penn State just poured it on there, had the punt return touchdown that was really the backbreaker, I thought. And, from there, James Franklin, he wanted to, continue to see the line coming out of Penn State, so that he wanted to get his guys realistic snaps and had his backup quarterback, who was actually the third stringer, he was the number 2 healthy, throwing when he came out of the gate. Look, I mean, Pitt's job is to stop him. Pat Narduzzi said so much afterward. He wasn't, he did make the comments like, hey, they've got to do what they've got to do, and sleep with it. That's fine, but it's my job's Pitt. That we got to coach our guys to stop them, not let them do it. I think the only thing about that whole situation that rubbed me a little the wrong way is why James Franklin was challenging a call with a minute left in the game.
Yeah,
that
all
the other stuff I can deal with. That's like, come on, guys, we want to go home. This one's out of question.
All right, this week Pitt takes on Georgia Tech, and I guess the question is, where does Pitt go from here? Where are they mentally after coming off such a disappointing loss?
Well, the right attitude, and I wrote about this on the site, hopefully you guys check it out from Pat Narduzzi's press conference Monday, that they need to just look at it as it's a clean slate. ACC play, I mean, frankly, if they can go out and win their division in the ACC, nobody's going to remember that Penn State game because they'll be going to a good bowl game. It's, they have everything to play for. They can put that one behind them. 51-6 is tough to get over, but it seems like, at least from talking to the players, Quadriolison, even after the game, was already onto that. He made the comments like, hey, we just got to focus on next week. 11-1 ain't bad. Nobody's going to complain about that. So it seems like they have the right mindset, but then it's a Georgia Tech team that always presents a difficult challenge with that option offense that they run, real run heavy.
Now, before we get into that, I want to ask you about Kenny Pickett. Obviously, there was a lot of pressure on him, a big stage against Penn State. Where do you see him, and was that stage maybe a little too big for him? I
don't think it was too big. I think, for one, the whole Pitt team did not play well given the conditions, and whether Pat Narduzzi said whether we need to do more wet ball drills, that sort of thing. Maybe that's what it is. But Pickett seemed to take a little too much on his shoulders, and sometimes there was pressure. It seemed like maybe he was ducking and running a little too quick, scrambling. Seemed to be putting a lot on himself. And you know what? He's a sophomore in that job. He kind of wants to be the hero. That's what you want from your quarterback. But maybe that's part of his development. He needs to learn to trust the guys around him, give him his receivers that little extra second to get open for him. he's a guy learning. I mean, we remember 2 years ago, Trace McSorley came into Heinz Field, played a pretty good game, but then threw just a really bad interception at the end. And I think it's turning out pretty well for Penn State, the way McSorley's played the last 2 years.
Yeah, so Pickett will be making his 4th career start against Georgia Tech.
Right. Weather affected things for Pitt Penn State this past weekend. Coming up this weekend could be a lot more of the same all around college football. Hurricane Florence is getting ready to make landfall sometime this week. We're not meteorologists, we don't know, but
no, not at all.
Yeah, but one of our teams around here, West Virginia, could be going right into the eye of the storm. They're supposed to play at NC State, a good Big 12 ACC matchup, but weather could really affect that. And when you see how it affected Pitt Penn State, how it's affected teams, I mean, what do you do to get ready for a situation where that could throw off travel too?
Tell me about it. We saw the Steelers game also affected by some weather up in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. There's really no great way to prepare for these things. Obviously, guys can wear longer spikes and stuff like that to try to prepare themselves for what they might be facing. But as you were saying with Pat Narduzzi, what do you do? Work on wet ball drills?
Yeah. Well, and during hockey season, I even remember you had some travel mishaps, just like with snow and that sort of thing. I mean, how big of how much can that affect teams just not getting to the hotel when they expect to, not arriving on time?
It's always an issue. I mean, obviously there was a game last year in Brooklyn where the Penguins had to fly into up by Greensburg, New York, up by the West Point Military Academy, and then had to bust in the day of the game to Long Island. It actually became one of the more memorable wins. But I'm thinking about all these travel adventures I had last year. The one place I did not have it was at NC State, which plays right across the street from the Carolina Hurricanes.
Exactly.
It's so far inland. I don't know why they're called the Hurricanes, but obviously these are powerful storms. And
yeah, it could have a big effect. And even rain in the forecast up north, where Pitt's going to host Georgia Tech, Penn State also hosting Kent State coming up this week. So weather's going to be a factor everywhere. So keep that in mind and stay dry if you're going out to one of those games.